friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 16th of July of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where Ukraine itself, during the previous 24 hours, was on the brink of abyss. Today, Zelensky decided to dismiss the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Fedorov, and telling the truth, he managed to do this. He hasn't managed to replace him, but he has dismissed him. This is a very important situation. And according to information we have, Ukrainians liked Fedorov because when Fedorov became the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, from this very moment, the Ukrainians intensified the use of drones. The Ukrainians began using drones to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. The Ukrainians began attacking ships and vessels through the Sea of Azov, through the Black Sea. Lots of oil refineries were attacked by the Ukrainians. Lots of trucks and vehicles were destroyed and damaged along the main logistic lines. And all these things started when Fedorov became the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. So that is why Ukrainians liked him. And the situation that the Minister of Defense is being removed by the President Zelensky is not something that the Ukrainians would accept. So that is why starting this morning we began receiving videos like this where we can see protests, cardboard protests against the resignation of Defense Minister Fedorov are flaring up in Kyiv. The protests have been joined by 9 other cities, including in the western parts of the country. Ukrainian media reports that criminal cases may now be brought against the former Ukrainian ministers in Torich. Another important thing that during the day we start receiving more and more updates on this matter, and at some moments we received a report that a dozen other cities across Ukraine over the dismissal of defense minister joined this rally. So this is a very important situation, and due to this situation, Zelensky was forced to change his opinion. During the previous 24 hours, he made a very important statement. Zelensky on the protests against the removal of Fedorov. I understand, I hear, I respond to what society is saying. We are fighting for freedom and democracy. People have the right to do what they want. If they wanted to come out and protest, then they were right to do so. And he changed his mind regarding appointment of Igor Klimenko on the position of the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, but at the same time he dismissed Fedorov himself. So as of now, Ukraine doesn't have the Minister of Defense. There is a person who will serve as the Minister of Defense of Ukraine until 18th of August of 2026, but most likely then Zelensky will finish the situation and he will appoint Igor Klimenko. So we have a very big distance, very big gap between Igor Klimenko and Fedorov. They are completely different, the ministers, and they have completely different approaches. When talking about Fedorov, once again, he prefers to use IT technologies, AI, and many other different tools that the Ukrainians can use to fight with the Russians remotely. As for Klimenko, he is a former chief of police of Ukraine, and as you may know, when talking about the mobilization process and the recruit process, we know that there are recruiters themselves, and as we know, these recruiters are being supported with police officers, so which means that Igor Klimenko knows for sure how to accelerate the mobilization process on the territory of Ukraine. And as of the current situation, we see that it is much more important for Zelensky to accelerate the mobilization process rather than improvements in AI technologies and drones and so on. And another important thing is not just the conflict between Zelensky and Fedorov. There is a conflict between Fedorov and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Syrsky. And Zelensky also made a statement on this matter. Zelensky said that they don't sit down with me, but these agencies should function independently. During wartime, the president shouldn't have to make that choice. I would very much like unity the two sides didn't find it, and the problem here isn't just theirs, it's mine too. I don't absolve myself of responsibility. So this is the situation. Let's wait and see this evening of the 16th of July of 2026 and the next day how the things are going to develop. But most likely the protest will drop, the protest activities would drop significantly within the next several days, and when the situation in society stabilized, then most likely Zelensky will assign Igor Klimenko as the head of the Ministry of Defense, which will allow the Ukrainians to intensify and to accelerate the mobilization process. And as Zelensky stated during the previous several days during his interviews, Putin might take certain escalatory steps after the elections. This could be an increase in mobilization. As we might know, according to information we have, currently the Russians have a little bit less than 800,000 soldiers on the territory of Ukraine who are fighting with the Ukrainians. And of course, we understand that if after the autumn elections, Russia announced mobilization, and if Russia mobilized, let's say, another 800,000 people, this will lead to the situation when the Russians will be able to increase their army and to make 2 times more army than they have right now, which means that from this perspective it would be very difficult for the Ukrainians to hold the lines, even if they have the most developed and advanced AI technologies and drone technologies. So this is the situation. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next, and meanwhile let's discuss the situation between Russia and Ukraine, and let's discuss the latest strikes between these countries. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians and the Ukrainians continued attacking each other using drones and missiles. The Russians, during the previous 24 hours, attacked the city of Kyiv and the city of Odessa. And this video was published this evening. And here we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, between the 15th and the 16th of July of 2026. And here we can see explosions. The Russians didn't use dozens of missiles. According to information we have, there were between 8 and 10 missiles used by Russia. There were Iskander missiles and there were S-400 missiles. The sources reported that the Russians struck just 2 parts of Ukraine, just 2 places, the most western parts of the city of Kyiv and the most eastern parts. So 2 fire anomalies were recorded this morning, and lots of pictures were published on this matter, and through these pictures we can see warehouses, ammo depots probably, and parking sites with trucks that were destroyed by Russians during the overnight attack. So we don't have big videos where we can see, or something like this where we could see the more details about these attacks, but one thing is clear, that if we zoom in these satellite pictures, then we'll see that in the area of fire anomalies we can see warehouses, and we can see trucks, we can see hundreds of vehicles, and we can see lots of places that the Ukrainians could use for military purposes. So probably this is the reason why the Russians attacked this territory. So here we have also lots of trucks as well. So this is the reason why the Russians attacked the city of Kyiv, but for some reason the Russians decided to stop their major attack, their massive attack, and they limited themselves with missiles and drones. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine this morning reported that the Russians used 164 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine. This is a very big number in comparison with previous days, but this is not a massive attack. Furthermore, the Russians during the previous night attacked the city of Odessa, and we have lots of videos. The Russians were trying to hit and to destroy as many as possible vessels and tankers, and we received lots of videos on this matter. Here we have a vessel that was attacked by Russians and badly damaged. As you can see, most likely this vessel required from now on a very big probably main service or maintain. Furthermore, the Russians attacked they attacked lots of vessels, and we have lots of videos on this matter. For example, here we have another vessel destroyed in the area of the port of infrastructure of the Yuzhny seaport of the Odessa region. Here we have black smoke and the vessel damaged by Russians. Here we have the port infrastructure of Chernomorsk. Here we have another vessel damage, and the Russians are not planning to stop these attacks, these tactics. They will continue attacking vessels, trying to destroy the Ukraine's logistics and probably export of products and goods through the Black Sea, as well as the import. And of course, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos where the Russians were attacking these vessels using drones. As you can see, the Russians use drones. The picture of this video has a very good quality, which means that the Russians have no problems with the signal between drones and main and headquarters. Very good quality, which means that the Russians improve their technology significantly. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians continue the battle through the eastern parts of the Black Sea. I would like to remind you that yesterday the Ukrainians, according to information we have, finished the battle for the Sea of Azov, and since the end of the 14th of July of 2026, we haven't received anything from this matter, because the Ukrainians shift their focus in the direction of the eastern parts of the Black Sea. And as for this territory, we received lots of videos during the previous 24 hours where we can see how Ukrainians using drones were also attacking vessels and different ships and tankers of Russia through the eastern parts of the Black Sea. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to this video, more than 10 ships were damaged or maybe even destroyed by the Ukrainians. Furthermore, when talking about the eastern parts of the Black Sea, the Ukrainians were using not just drones, the Ukrainians were also using Navy drones and manned surface vessels. And here we can see these Navy drones attacking tankers in the eastern parts of the Black Sea. According to information we have, at least 2 tankers were attacked by the Ukrainians and probably damaged. So as we can see, and if the things continue developing the same thing, most likely in 2-3 weeks, neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians would be able to use the Black Sea for their purposes, or we're gonna have a deal, between Russians and Ukrainians, something like a grain deal that we used to see through the 2023 and 2022, probably something like this. So this is the situation in this area. We also have lots of satellite pictures where we can see all these tankers and vessels that were damaged by the Ukrainian side. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important changes, updates. The Russians continued their Zaporozhye offensive operation, and after a very long operational pause through the western parts of the Zaporozhye direction, the Russians resumed their offensive operation. And since the end of the 14th of July of 2026, the Russians, as you can see, have improved their position significantly. As of the end of the 16th of July of 2026, we haven't received video proofs that the Russians improved their positions in this area, but pro-Russian sources, very reliable sources, claim that this is the situation. The Russians continue advancing between the settlements of Kopany and Kamenskaya Stepnogorsk in the northeastern direction, probably trying to outflank the city of Orekhov from the west and from the northwest, and to bridge Ukraine's defenses in this area and to outflank the Orekhov agglomeration itself. Meanwhile, the Russians continue bombing positions of the armed forces of Ukraine through the settlements of Yurevka, Kamyshivacha, using bombs, trying to soften defenses of the Ukrainian armed forces. So this is the situation through this area. Most likely in coming days we'll receive more updates about the situation. Furthermore, the Russians during the nights were attacking the city of Zaporozhye, warehouses, ammo depots, everything was attacked by Russians. As for the Dnipro and Dobropolye direction, we have small changes. The Russians, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, improved their positions through the eastern parts of the city of Belitska, and this video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. And here we can see Russians that were moving along this tree line in the direction of the city of Belitska, in the direction of its eastern parts. Based on this video, we came to conclusion that the Russians during the previous days improved their positions. This is the end of the 15th of July, and this is all already the end of the 16th of July of 2026. The Russians continue their offensive operation for the settlement of Belitska. It seems that the Russians will try to take the settlement under complete control. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians control around 80% of the city, and the Ukrainians are trying to hold their lines for as long as possible. Now let's talk about the Drishkovka-Slavinsk direction. We have significant changes to the east of the city of Kramatorsk, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 15th, and this is the end of the 16th of July of 2026. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see lots of episodes how Ukrainians using drones were attacking Russian positions through these tree lines. Based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly these days. The Russians managed to shorten the distance to the city of Kramatorsk itself, and currently the distance between edge positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation and the city of Kramatorsk itself is around 5 kilometers, which is nothing. The Russians during the previous 2 weeks managed to improve their position significantly through the east and Kramatorsk direction, and we see that the Russians continue advancing. If the Russians are able to break through Ukraine's defenses through this area, and furthermore, if the Russians are able to answer the eastern parts of the city of Kramatorsk, this will change the situation, and this is going to be obviously a media victory for Russians. Meanwhile, the Russians continue bombing the city of Kramatorsk with aviation. During the previous 24 hours, lots of explosions were recorded through the city. Probably the Russians managed to damage this facility, this industrial zone in the central part of the city of Kramatorsk that most likely the Ukrainians use for military purposes. Now let's move further. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 12 hours, we received a very interesting report. More precisely, we received lots of updates, but the most important is not the things and videos that we can see through these updates. The most important is position. As you can see, all these updates are located to the west of the city of Oskol. We stopped receiving anything through the eastern parts of the river of Oskol when talking about Russia's drone strikes and so on, which means that most likely the Russians either finished the battle for the eastern parts of the river of Oskol or about to do this, and now the Russians are focused to attack positions of the armed forces of Ukraine to the west of the city of Kupiansk-Uzlavoy on the way towards the settlement of Shevchenka. So these updates and these coordinates signal us that most likely the Russians may be even already on the Ukraine side of the river Oskol. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, the most important updates we received from the northern Kharkiv direction, from the Kharkiv direction itself. The Russians attacked the territory in the Kharkiv direction. We have this video published by sources. According to this video, another gas station to the southwest of the city of Kharkiv was destroyed. We are talking about this territory. Also, we can see a parking site with trucks in this area. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Kharkiv itself during the nights, and this morning we received this video where we can see the consequences of attack. A building, multi-story building, was significantly badly damaged. To the north of the city of Kharkiv, the Russians continue advancing both in the Kazachia Lopan direction and Vysokaya Ruga direction. The Ukrainians published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation along the western bank of the Trevianska water reserve. So this forest was attacked by the Ukrainians, which means that the Russians right now continue advancing further in the area of Male Prokhody through this big forest with the purpose to get as close as possible the city of Kharkiv. The Russians continue the Kharkiv offensive operation. We see that almost every single day, every single week we have changes. Sometimes the changes are very small, but we have them, and we color and color and color this territory in the Russian favor. As for the Sumy direction, no changes were recorded during the previous 24 hours. Another important thing is the situation with the northwestern parts of Ukraine. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that for the first time for a very long period of time, or maybe for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians destroyed a gas station along the MO7 road between the border with Poland and the city of Kyiv. And today, pro-Ukrainian sources published an article, and according to this article, we see that the Russians turned on the equipment along the border between Belarus and Ukraine that allows the Russians to control drones, and this is the approximate roads of attack, and this road shows how exactly the Russians destroyed the gas station to the northwest of the city of Kyiv. So now we see that the Russians don't keep this equipment along the border always turned on. They turn them on only when needed, which means that this situation simplifies the diplomacy between Belarus and Ukraine, and at the same time this situation allows the Russians to continue using this equipment to increase the accuracy of strikes along the MO7 roads through these northwestern parts of Ukraine. But at the same time, we see that the Russians don't use this equipment at full capacity, which means that the Russians are still preparing themselves before something bigger. And that's